Now, immigrants seeking a legal pathway to live and work in the United States will now be subject to screening for, quote, anti-Americanism. On Tuesday, officials with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services officers said they'll now consider whether an applicant for benefits such as a green card endorsed, promoted, supported, or otherwise espoused anti-American, terroristic, or anti-Semitic views.
A spokesperson added that immigration benefits, including the right to live and work in the United States, remain a privilege, not a right. Critics argue that it gives officers too much leeway in rejecting foreigners based on a subjective judgment. It isn't specified what constitutes anti-Americanism, and it isn't clear how and when the directive would be applied.
All right, joining us now, our chief legal analyst, Collie Frodes. Let's start here. I don't think anybody wants any bad actors in this country. Nobody would disagree with that. But when it comes to the question of anti-American, that's subjective, and they haven't given any terms or details on how they're going to define that. Is that problematic looking at it from a legal sense, saying, okay, it's just up to the officer that you're dealing with?
Anti-American, ill-defined, and subjective is right on the, I had it written down as my key points is what I thought would be problematic moving forward with something like this. When I read this, there's nothing new that happens under the sun. We've been here before as a country. Folks often don't like looking back at history, so it's easy to forget these types of things. When you talk about this nationalism, right, this increased awareness and wanting to be, promote American values first, President Trump may be the person of the day that's talking about this, but this has been something that we've done before during the Cold War, during President Truman's era. We had these loyalty tests before. Now, this wasn't an outward-looking one. This was an inward-looking loyalty test. When we had instead of the Communist Party and attempted to ensure that folks didn't infiltrate our country, they had these loyalty tests where they were testing members of our government. 2 million individuals that were working for the government at that time were tested to ensure that they had these American or non-anti-American values instilled in them. And what did it instill in us? It had a chilling effect. It had a social impact. It had a fear effect. People were scared to talk to their coworkers about things because they thought they'd land on someone's list. Fast forward past Truman to the 50s, what did we have? McCarthy. McCarthy comes out with a list of 205 names that he said, hey, I know these folks are communists. And all those folks that were on those lists, lives were upended. So when you start having these types of tests to determine, if you are someone that believes in the values of this country in our or for America or against America, when you're creating these lists, they never end well. And when it's subjective like this, where you have an opportunity in an individual capacity to determine if a person can come in or has to go back to running from wherever, persecution or political upheaval that they were going within their country, it makes it challenging at best, but for sure, when you ask about the not having the definition, that's going to be that due process. Due process requires that it has to be specific, and if it is not specific, if it is vague, if it's arbitrary, enforceability becomes extremely problematic.
And there's also no guidelines for when this would happen. Again, the specifics aren't really there, but if people who feel that they're being denied this, but they're not already citizens, what, if any, legal recourse do they have to sue or otherwise?
I mean, it's going to be a number of challenges for them as the person that feels like they've been, wrongfully denied. But it would also be some legitimate legal challenges. Julian already hit on the due process argument, so that would be a claim. I would also hit equal protections. If you're targeting one race, one nationality, one religion over another, that would be another challenge that you could, raise and argue. You'd have some statutory authority. The executive is not the person, or I should say the branch, that sets and determines, the groundwork. This is congressional. And so if it was found that the executive has overreached, has overstepped, then Congress can reel some of that back in. And then the last argument would be First Amendment. And there's a split of authority there. There are a number of legal scholars that believe individuals that come into this country at the moment of entry are granted and given the same equal access to rights, specifically First Amendment rights, that you or I have. There are some on the other side that believe that that's not accurate and that they have no rights until they move in the country, and even after, given a work green card, given a student visa, given some type of work permit, they still would not be afforded those rights. That argument is not as clearly defined. That's more of a gray area. But those other three, due process, equal protection, and that statutory authority, I think that's where the argument will lie.
Khalif, real quick, if you are a immigration attorney, you have a client who's trying to get family members into the country, what do you advise them to tell their relatives?
They'll already be doing a social media vetting, right? And so if you're the government, that is, they're already doing this social media vetting. And so you need to do your own vetting. Ensure that anything that's on your social media page is clearly reflective of the American values, even though we don't have a definition. Pull up whatever you think that would connect to American values and ensure that you have those types of things on there. I mean, but if I can quickly say, I've been a part of that process. When I was clerking in the federal courthouse in Michigan, I participated in the swearing in of folks that went through the immigration process.
Yeah.
I got to read their names and read the oath to them and watch them raise their hand. To see that process is probably one of the best feelings ever, because you could see the look of hope in dreams right on their face right while they were doing it. And the hurdles that they already have to jump over are already insurmountable for folks that are just come from, starving and running from religious and social and economic persecution. So to add another hurdle, I understand that we're attempting to clean up the process that is already muddy, but this may be something that is going to make it harder, extremely harder to get in this country for lawfully people that aren't committing crimes.
And have a chilling effect, as you mentioned. All right. Our chief legal analyst, Khalif Rhodes. Khalif, thank you.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.